the scene of a peaceful Sunday at the crowded Pharaoh's ice cream shop. Families gathered together, lively birthday parties, and cheerful chatter, blended with the sweet flavor of ice cream, painting a beautiful picture of life. Perhaps the customers presented the ice cream shop at that moment never imagined that. In just a moment, an unexpected incident would suddenly strike, turning their originally beautiful Sunday into a horrific tragedy. So, what happened on that fateful day? What mistakes led to this unforgettable disaster? Let's explore the mystery of the 1972 Pharaoh tragedy, the plane crash that claimed 22 lives. And as usual, before getting into the main content, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to support our team. Thank you all for your support. On September 24, 1972, the clear sky of California created an ideal setting for the Golden Breath Sport Aviation Air Show. This event gathered a large number of aircraft, from classic prototypes to experimental ones, offering the audience a diverse static exhibition and impressive aerial displays. A special highlight of the program was the appearance of a Canadian F-86 Sabre jet after a meticulous restoration process. Manufactured in 1953, it was one of over 340 aircraft produced for combat service, marking an important milestone in military aviation history. After completing their missions, a large number of Sabre aircraft were converted into drones for the U.S. military to use in missile tests. Meanwhile, an aviation enthusiast decided to preserve and restore these aircraft. Richard Bingham, 36, the CEO of a private airline, was one such person. With a strong passion, he spent 10 years restoring the neglected Sabre and returning it to the sky. With over 2,000 accumulated flight hours, Bingham was clearly an experienced pilot. However, it is noteworthy that his total time piloting the F-86 Sabre was barely under 4 hours. Could this lack of experience have been a warning sign for one of America's most serious aviation disasters? Before the accident, the F-86 Sabre had an impressive performance, including some low-altitude moves and aerial acrobatics. These maneuvers fortunately received enthusiastic applause from the large audience present at the exhibition. After the impressive performance, pilot Bingham prepared for the flight back to his private home in Auckland. The success of the show seemed to still linger in him. Meanwhile, less than 1.6 kilometers from the airport, an atmosphere of excitement and enthusiasm enveloped the town. Over 100 people, including the enthusiastic Sacramento 49ers football team, had gathered at the famous Pharaoh ice cream shop to enjoy a warm sundae with sweet desserts. Pharaoh Ice Cream Shop, located in the center of the Crossroads shopping mall, had a prime location facing the end of the airport runway. This unique feature attracted many customers to enjoy ice cream and the 102-degree view of planes taking off. Meanwhile, at the airport, pilot Bingham began taxiing the F-86 Sabre on the runway, preparing for his flight home. With experience taking off from runways 3 kilometers long, he was placed in a situation where he had to adapt to the infrastructure at Sacramento Airport, where the runway was only 1.5 kilometers long. This difference in runway length seemed to impose higher technical demands on the takeoff process. Theoretically, with the performance of a jet like the F-86 Sabre, taking off from a runway shorter than standard was not too big an issue. However, pilot Bingham's experience with this aircraft model was limited, and perhaps this lack of experience turned what seemed like a minor issue into the cause of the disaster. According to witness accounts, they saw Bingham accelerating the Sabre on the runway. The jet initially lifted about 0.6 meters off the ground, but then lowered and slowed down momentarily while the nose was still pointing upward. This happened when the aircraft was about 1 kilometer from the end of the runway. A few seconds later, with only about 460 meters of runway left ahead, the Sabre accelerated again to 257 kilometers per hour and seemed to take off once more, lifting about 1.5 meters above the ground. But in just a moment, everyone realized that the pilot could not achieve the necessary altitude for a safe takeoff. Bingham began to execute the takeoff abort procedure. He lowered the landing gear to touch down and continued racing straight ahead, trying to slow down the plane that was hurtling forward at a terrifying speed. And then disaster struck, in a flash, unexpectedly, with no one able to react in time. The plane was still moving at high speed, zooming down the runway until it ran out of runway. At this point, Bingham could not stop the plane, and he careened out the runway, climbed over a nearby embankment before crashing through a steel mesh fence. The torn metal fence ruptured the fuel tanks, causing gasoline to start leaking and igniting fiercely. Not stopping there, the plane continued to surge forward, tearing across the 4-lane 3-pot boulevard right next to it, then collided violently with a car traveling on the road. That horrific impact sent the car flying far away, while the plane kept on going, crashing into several other vehicles parked in the shopping center's parking lot. At this moment, all that pilot Bingham could do was cover his face and wait for the worst to happen. Finally, like an uncontrollable monster, the jet crashed through the wall of the Campero ice cream shop's parking lot and came to a stop. The next day, witnesses reported seeing a horrific explosion, with flames shooting up at least 3 meters high. The entire front facade of the Campero shop quickly engulfed as local rescue forces were quickly mobilized to the scene, including the airport's aircraft accident rescue team and nearby U.S. Air Force personnel. When the rescue forces arrived at the scene, just minutes after receiving a report, they witnessed a truly chaotic and heartbreaking scene. Thick black smoke billowed from the building. Charred, mangled cars lay scattered everywhere, victims strewn among the wreckage and the raging flames. Although the Campero shop was equipped with a sprinkler fire suppression system, the flames still engulfed the entire front room and surrounding area, where the plane collided with the vehicles. Due to the massive fire and collapsed walls, firefighters faced intense heat and numerous dangers to reach survivors. It could be said, the heat was so horrifying it scorched the paint on cars parked nearly 20 meters away. Meanwhile, the pressure from the explosion caused additives in nearby stores to topple over. At the same time, seeing the smoke column rising from the explosion, spectators of the air show also ran toward the accident scene. Among them, an elderly woman was unfortunately struck and killed by a truck while rushing to the scene, because she mistakenly thought her grandchildren were in the ice cream shop. What a heartbreaking tragedy. But it was also fortunate that the elderly woman's grandchildren were not present at the feral ice at the time of the accident. However, there were still other children inside. 4-year-old Carrie Frances McCloskey was attending a friend's birthday party along with her twin sister Christy. The twin sisters were very excitedly awaiting Farrell's special treat. The dish was served in a very special way, on a stretcher. But just as the giant ice cream was brought to the table, the two sisters heard a loud noise. Then everything plunged into darkness. Smoke from a pile of rubble flooded the room. That was the last time Carrie saw her twin sister alive. Years later, witnesses still recount chilling stories about the horrific scene that took place inside Feral Ice Cream that day. One lucky survivor described the explosion occurring. As she put a spoonful of ice cream in it, she was thrown into the next seat. Afterward, she tried to crawl across the table to find her. She couldn't find her father, but eventually found her sisters and brothers. At the time of the accident, there were about 17 children from the 49er soccer team sitting near the front window, overlooking the end of the runway. When the jet crashed into the building, the entire wall in that area was completely destroyed, throwing the children far away. Sadly, most of the victims were later found in the rubble in this very area. Searching for survivors in the rubble, amid a sea of fire and smoke, was an extremely difficult challenge, even for the most experienced rescue workers. Undeterred by the danger, emergency rescue workers began pulling trapped people from the burning ice cream shop. The rescue effort lasted for hours, despite the scorching heat. A temporary morgue was set up right in the parking lot to handle the bodies that were found. Amid the tragic scene, a glimmer of hope still flickered. Pilot Bingham, who was considered the cause of the tragedy, was pulled from the rubble alive, though with a broken arm and some facial injuries. Perhaps due to extreme panic and remorse, he kept repeating, "I'm sorry, I." Shortly after being rescued from the rubble, survivors were quickly taken to nearby medical centers. However, the tragedy was so sudden and horrific that all hospitals were overwhelmed. The hallways were packed due to insufficient room to handle a disaster of such a large scale. Therefore, many burned victims had to be taken to San Francisco or Los Angeles for treatment. Meanwhile, rescue operations were still underway urgently, and as firefighters pulled more bodies from the rubble. This became one of the worst aviation disasters in California. But the true extent of the tragedy only became known when all the bodies had been recovered. Perhaps the most tragic aspect of this accident is the story of an 8-year-old child. The child was fortunate to survive the accident, but lost 9 family members, including parents, 2 older brothers, 1 older sister, 2 grandparents, and 2 cousins. As night fell, 28 people required medical care. But beyond the physical pain, the emotional pain was many times more agonizing. And after the horrific accident, a series of unanswered questions remained. What was the true cause of this incident? Who will be held accountable for these immense losses? To clarify the cause of this catastrophic accident, the National Transportation Safety Board, abbreviated as NTSB, conducted a comprehensive investigation. They carefully examined every piece of the aircraft wreckage, collected evidence from the scene, and interviewed witnesses. And during the investigation, disturbing hypotheses gradually came to light. At the hearing, pilot Bingham recounted what happened on that fateful day. According to his account, everything was proceeding normally as he taxied on the runway and began takeoff. But shortly after, he noticed an unusual vibration beneath his seat. Concerned by this abnormal sign, Bingham quickly considered aborting the takeoff. However, in the end, he decided to let the aircraft touch and continue to take off as the vibration lessened. Even though he knew the remaining runway was not long, he still believed the aircraft could take off successfully. In fact, even before this, Bingham's instructor had expressed concerns about his ability to control the aircraft. Bingham had only 3 hours of experience flying this type of aircraft, and that was truly very dangerous. However, the instructor did not oppose certifying him, believing that Bingham would continue to seek additional training to improve his skills. Pilot Bingham was assessed as an experienced pilot, with 2,085 hours logged in his flight log. Of those, 342 hours were jet flight time, specifically on the Learjet. Although jet flight experience aids in quick reactions, the conditions of the Learjet differ from those of the F-86 Sabre. The Learjet allows the pilot to pitch the nose steeply during takeoff. However, the design of the F-86 made it prone to stalling if the aircraft's nose is pulled up too quickly, perhaps due to experience with this aircraft line. Pilot Bingham had inadvertently made that dangerous mistake, as mentioned earlier. The investigators concluded excessive rotation during takeoff is one of the causes leading to accidents. The NTSB report also indicated that visual signals are factors contributing to the incident. Bingham was used to taking off in tests from the runway in Auckland, longer than 3 kilometers and surrounded by San Francisco Bay, creating a wide-open horizon. On the contrary, the runway in Sacramento is only half as long and surrounded by many obstacles, including trees, buildings, and water towers. Those factors, along with limited visibility from the cockpit, may have made pilot Bingham feel a sense of urgency, must take off quickly, and finally, leading to the aircraft over-rotating, out of control and causing a tragedy. The final report confirms that the fighter jet has met safety standards and the pilot is fully licensed. However, the NTSB also emphasized serious shortcomings in the process of aircraft license and the pilot's license at that time. After the accident, many important changes have been implemented to enhance aviation safety. Federal Aviation Administration, FAA. Military jets have now been banned from flying over densely populated air if there is no pre-approved itinerary. The FAA also requires more rigorous competency tests for pilots according to updated standards. If these regulations had been in effect at that time, Bingham will not be licensed to fly this fighter jet. From the families of the victims, they sued the owner and operator of the aircraft. This leads to many prolonged lawsuits. It took nearly 4 years. A new settlement agreement was introduced in 1976. Accordingly, through the defendants' insurance policies, the victims' families received $5 million to share among themselves. The tragedy at Camp Farrell claimed the lives of 22 people. The youngest victim was only 2 years old. Many of those who died related to the junior Sacramento 49ers rugby team. Most died from thermal burns or smoke inhalation in the fire. Time passes, wounds may heal, but the pain remains. The Crossroads shopping complex, where that heartbreaking tragedy took place. It was then replaced by the Sacramento Public Safety Center, right at the location that was once the entrance to Camp Farrell's shop. A memorial park has been built, as a reminder of the tragedy that occurred, and also as a place for people to remember the unfortunate victims. The accident at Camp Farrell's shop serves as a wake-up call about the fragility of life and the importance of complying with safety regulations. 22 lives were unjustly lost, leaving endless pain for families and loved ones. It is hoped that this tragedy will never be repeated. Thank you for listening to this true story with Con Ha. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the Realm of the Unseen channel. See you in the next episodes.
If the veil stirred, subscribe and meet the next encounter.